The Pale King is a very important character in Hollow Knight. While not particularly relevant during the gameplay, he is crucial to the game's lore. Let's go back to his origins, even before he had the appearance that we all know. At the beginning of the Hallownest Kingdom, when bugs were still primitive creatures, a higher being arrived in the lands now known as Hallownest. The Worm, which in this video, we will refer to as the Pale Worm. The worms are gigantic worms compared to other bugs. These individuals possess various abilities, but among them, one stands out: foresight, meaning he can predict the future in an extraordinary way. However, they are dwindling for reasons we do not know. The Pale Worm is one of the last worms still alive until he arrived in the lands now known as Kingdom's Edge, where he died. Not exactly. What really happened was that the worm transformed into a much smaller being, this to gain the favor of the creatures in the area, as he had a goal, to establish a kingdom. Following his transition, the Pale Worm granted the wild bugs the ability to have independent thoughts, and as a result, they began to worship him. In gratitude, the Pale Worm promised them that he would establish a kingdom that would be eternal. Physically, the Pale Worm is described by the creatures as someone imposing, with an immense glow, and wearing a crown with horns, very similar to his previous form. Something like this. His power was so enormous that he aroused admiration from other species such as the mushrooms, moleskins, and most importantly, the moths. The moths are a tribe created by the radiance, the light, the brilliance, a superior entity beyond our understanding. For obvious reasons, the moths worship the radiance, but upon witnessing the awe-inspiring power of the Pale Worm, they began to venerate him above their mother, and she gradually fell into oblivion. Some time after these events, Hallownest, the Eternal Kingdom, was founded. Of course, the worm was named as the king, becoming known as the Pale King, alongside the queen known as the White Lady. Following this, the kingdom prospered incredibly, and at its center, the capital city of Hallownest was built, where the upper class of bugs resided. To access it, the Pilgrim's Way was constructed, connecting the outskirts of the kingdom to the city. Meanwhile, the monarch built a palace deep within the kingdom, which seemed peculiar, until you realize that beneath it lies the abyss, a place of extreme importance. Returning to the topic, it is said that it was not very common for the king to leave his palace, perhaps due to the insecurity of being much smaller than before, or for various reasons. However, Hallownest was thriving in the best way. Until the light that had been forgotten by the moths returned with unimaginable fury, so much so that she began to appear in the minds of the kingdom's inhabitants, subjecting them to her will. However, they tried to resist, but the influence was so great that it began to manifest in the form of an orange infection that slowly destroyed them. The kingdom was in decline, the capital was closed in an attempt to halt the plague, but it was futile. Not even the worm's royal guard could do anything, as the disease was a mental problem. The king was forced to devise a plan to save the kingdom. Alongside the White Lady, they spawned hundreds of thousands of offspring, who were cast into the abyss so that the void entered them, making them completely empty, thus preventing the radiance from entering their minds, as they would have none. One of these vessels would be chosen to contain the infection within, and this became the Hollow Knight. But, as we all know, the Hollow Knight did not fulfill its purpose and ultimately succumbed to the madness of the radiance. Upon realizing that Hallownest was beyond salvation, the king retreated along with his palace into the dream realm, disappearing from the plane of reality. At this point, we can say that the worm did everything possible to try to save the kingdom, and gave his last breath. However, we overlook something. The Pale King knew that the Hollow Knight would fail. Let's remember that worms have the ability of foresight. Yet, he sent his own child on an impossible mission. It seems that the king carried out the Hollow Knight's plan solely to present a good image of himself to his subjects, even though he knew it was only a matter of time before the infection returned to the kingdom. And even worse, he already knew everything that would happen, even before founding 𝐊𝐈𝐍𝐆, when he was still a gigantic worm. The worm decided to create the kingdom despite knowing it would bring suffering to all its inhabitants, which undoubtedly makes him an evil being, who only thinks of his own interests. The video could end here, concluding that the Pale King is the true enemy of this story. However, there's something else to consider. As far as we know, the Pale King kept his word, and 𝐊𝐿𝐼𝐍𝐆 lasts eternal, thanks to the help of a hero who will not be remembered despite saving the kingdom. This hero shares the same origin as the Hollow Knight, but was one of the many vessels that didn't make it to the top of the abyss and escaped through another route. But what if the Pale King really knew about the existence of the Knight? Given his ability to foresee the future, it's not unreasonable to think that the Hollow Knight was simply another part of the plan, a much larger plan. To awaken and unite the void, thereby defeating the Radiance, which was successfully completed. Despite everything, we cannot assert that this was the case. Perhaps the Pale King was simply foolish, or perhaps he was truly a mastermind. I leave it to your judgment.